Welcome to Spiritual Geography. I'm Joni Miller. One Saturday night in January 2016, I sat in the back of a large ballroom in Houston, Texas. I was at a conference, the Gay Christian Network Conference, and Saturday night was open mic night. Not open mic for performances, there was no singing or comedy acts here. It was an open mic for anyone who wanted to come forward and tell their story in a room that was full of love and support. There were 2 microphones on the stage available for anyone to share their story, and person after person spoke about their heartbreak, stories of being rejected by their families, their religious community, their longtime friends when they came out as gay or trans. There were stories of fear of recrimination for coming out, fear of losing jobs or losing homes, and stories where those kinds of fears were realized and the person was left homeless, lost, alone. And yet, in each person's sharing, there was also hope. Hope that the strength gained over those few short days of the conference would buoy and encourage and allow the person to move forward. Hope for healing, hope for change. Parents of LGBTQ persons were waiting on the sides of the stage to hug those who spoke. They had buttons on their shirts, free mom hug or free dad hug, so that someone who may be estranged from their own family could still feel a tender parental embrace, even if just for a brief moment. I sat in the back of the ballroom and cried in awe of the people who spoke. What kind of courage and conviction does it take to come out as gay when the revelation could mean blowing up your whole life? It reminded me of the Anais Nin quote, "And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom." These individuals knew the pain both ways, to continue to hide and pretend, remaining tight in a bud, or risk the pain and rejection possible when they came out, starting a journey of blossoming into the person who felt most authentic. The pain of hiding felt more intense than their fear of what would happen as they emerged into their authentic selves. There was a theme of rejection that ran through all the speakers. Rejection in the name of God. Rejection from God. Now, I was raised in a mainline Protestant Christian denomination and was never part of the kind of conservative Christian communities of which many of the speakers were describing. And I had just spent the last 5 years trying to understand this kind of spirituality through my dissertation research with conservative Christian counseling students who were wrestling with the ethical responsibility to provide services to LGBTQ clients. I had been drawn to the topic because I didn't understand spirituality that excludes, spirituality that puts restrictions on who is worthy. One important thing I learned from my research is that those counseling students who were grappling with this issue had a primary question underlying their dilemma: am I betraying my faith, betraying God, if I somehow accept LGBTQ persons? And understanding that underlying question increased my empathy exponentially. But my empathy was still far more with LGBTQ persons, which led me to giving a workshop on using counseling concepts for self-insight and improved communication at that Gay Christian Network conference in 2016. I left the conference with no doubt that the evangelical Christian mantra of hate the sin, love the sinner was not received benignly by those who had been perceived as sinning by their church communities. People at the conference said it felt more like, I know you will hate me unless I conform to what you believe I should be, do, and feel. They didn't feel loved, but despised. And sometimes worse than the rejection by family and friends was this pervasive feeling that God didn't love them or couldn't love them. And this can lead to self-hatred. If God can't love me, then I am inherently unlovable. And statistics show that LGBTQ young people are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than their peers. And statistics for those who experience parental rejection for their sexual or gender identity are even higher. This is a spirituality that harms. The paradox is that those who promote religious beliefs against LGBTQ would say they're actually helping someone who comes out as LGBTQ by trying to correct their beliefs, bringing them back to the correct path, which will ultimately let them get into heaven. Rebuking others within their faith community is expected. The assumption is that the offending party is sinning, not necessarily for doing anything, but merely for having those kind of feelings. And somehow, if you are not trying to bring someone back to this very narrow path, you are also sinning. I still find this very odd. You have to be very certain of your beliefs, very certain your beliefs are correct, right, and absolute to reject your own child when they come out as LGBTQ, or to do harm to the people who are suppressing their feelings within your community, even if you don't know them. The harm comes because those who are secretly LGBTQ know you don't consider them worthy of God's love unless that part of them is denied. I heard testimony from hundreds of people at that conference supporting what I just said. Placing a condition in order to receive divine love is harmful. I have 2 questions when looking at someone's spirituality. Are their spiritual beliefs life-giving to them, to the person themselves? And do these spiritual beliefs hurt them or anyone else? If their spirituality is life-giving and doesn't hurt them or anyone else, who am I to judge? And yet, here I am judging because the answer to that second question is yes, these are the kinds of spiritual beliefs that hurt other people. Rigidity about sexual orientation and gender identity in the name of religion can push people away from families, from friends, and from the divine, and lead to psychological trauma, self-harm, and suicide. The first evening of the Gay Christian Network Conference in 2016 ended with a small group exercise where we introduced ourselves. The people at my table all had stories of varying degrees of heartbreak. I spoke last after a gentleman who came to the conference from Africa. He and I spoke after that night's session was over. He had watched the conference online the year before and wanted to be a part of it. He came from a place where he could be put to death for being gay. He said he had never met a person like me before, someone who wasn't gay, but was accepting of gays. He asked me about my religious understanding that created this sense of acceptance. I tried to convey the love that I believed was available to everyone, and that I didn't believe there was some sort of entrance exam for heaven. We didn't talk for long, but spontaneously embraced when we were done. That encounter surprised me. I was also surprised when I was waiting for the van to go back to the airport after the conference was over. A young man who had been in my workshop asked me about my conference experience as we were waiting. I said something about how great it was, but it was a little unusual for me since I came as an ally, not a member of the community or as a parent. He said, "Oh no, you allies were the ones who made the difference for me." He told me that he came to the conference comfortable with his sexuality, but uncertain about God and Jesus. He said that allies had no ulterior motive for accepting both LGBTQ and Christianity. He felt others might be justifying their actions or twisting their faith to suit their situation, but allies didn't need to do that. If allies felt that God still loved him, he said, maybe he could believe it too. Maybe he could believe that God loves him. I left with the knowledge that I may have helped that young man more than I helped anyone with my workshop, merely by sharing my belief that divine love was unconditional. Now, you may say that I am being quite certain that my spirituality is right. I'm not. My spiritual belief is that there is something beyond our understanding and earthly experience, whether someone calls that something God, the universe, spirit, or something else, some other name. And I believe that this something beyond our earthly experience has a core attribute of love. I don't know if I'm right or not, but my spiritual understanding does not cause psychological harm to others. Do no harm. I want to help create a world with more love, more acceptance, and more understanding. A world where people connect more deeply with the divine and feel the benefit of that divine love in whatever way most resonates with them. In the next episode, I'll continue my discussion of when spirituality harms. We'll discuss the importance of listening to someone's lived experience rather than making assumptions, and analyze the sets of assumptions that may underline spiritual certainty that hurts others. We don't understand the mysteries of the universe, but we can grow more love. Love for ourselves, love for others, and love for the infinite mystery that lays beyond our understanding. Thank you for tuning in.